Yeah, so if somebody tells you to jump, do you say, "How high, sir?" Or do you say, "Stuff it, I'm not going to jump. I don't feel like jumping and I'm not going to take orders from you"? Well, if you're a figure skater, maybe you should ask how high. Maybe this is quite a legitimate and important question. And this is the topic today. And I'll cover it extensively, but not entirely, because a whole book could be written on the topic of how high should you jump as a figure skater? And the answer is not simple. At first blush, you think, oh, well, I should jump as high as possible because then I have more air time and then I can get more rotations completed during that air time. And that's true, but it's not the whole truth. And so I want to explain to you, yes, Professor Beacom wishes to explain to you some of the ins and outs and some of the math and the physics here in this lecture today. And I know maybe you just wanted to see me skate, but before you go ballistic and see me in the classroom, just bear with me, because this is going to help your figure skating if you can just slow down and learn a concept or a concept or two that are not really that difficult to learn. I'm going to go through some of the math for you, but you don't have to know the math to understand what's important to know to be the best figure skater you can be. And yeah, okay, so ballistics, yeah, I don't know how it came to be associated with anger. Oh, she went ballistic. What is ballistic? Ballistics, actually. Ballistics is a branch of physics with maybe originally military applications, but has to do with projectiles. And ballistics has that word. It starts with the word ball, and you think of balls. We throw balls and they bounce, and the path that they make through the air is a parabola. Parabola. It's spelled with an O, but it has the same etymology as ball, and even volleyball. Volleyball is actually double ball, because the Greek pronunciation of that beta at the beginning of their word to throw in Greek, at least the audio that I heard about, sounds like a V. Volley in Greek. And ballistics. And parabola, so parabola has the same, that ball in there to throw. Well, in volleyball you don't throw, you just you think of throwing as holding something and chucking it. A volley in tennis, we use the same word, and it means it doesn't bounce first. And that's the same thing in volleyball. It doesn't bounce first. That's the meaning that it's come to take on. Yeah, ballistics. So why is ballistics important in figure skating? Is because as figure skaters, we are projectiles. And a projectile, simply speaking, is... Let me see if I can draw a parabola here. Something that looks something similar to a parabola. That's not a parabola. It's maybe more circular, because joints tend to move in circles. And yeah, I was doing a little more complicated thing, but A parabola is actually, if you slice a cone parallel to one side, you get a parabola. And a parabola could be shaped like this way, or a parabola could be shaped, you know, more like this type of thing. So, and the difference here with relation to like a skating jump is maybe this one doesn't jump as high, but it has a lot more speed. And this one, not very much speed, but jump very high. But it always makes a parabola. And interestingly, air time, the time that you're in the air. The time that you're in the air as a projectile is a function only of your speed when you leave the ground. So at the moment when you leave the ground and go airborne, your center of mass goes through a parabolic motion until you hit the ground again. And air resistance is not a factor for figure skating, where it would be, like even if you're firing a gun, the bullet goes through a parabolic path in theory, but in actuality the wind slows that bullet down, and so it's an asymmetrical path, like a golf ball as well and stuff like that. But for figure skating purposes, we're pretty much parabolic, and it's not a very long time either in the air. So this is pretty good analogy, and it's a good way of conceptualizing what you do in a jump. And the interesting thing is that your air time is a function only of your speed as you leave the ground. When you analyze yourself as a projectile. Now, yes, it's a little more complicated than that when, you know, like a ball doesn't change its shape, whereas a human body can change its shape in a number of ways, you know. So, and when you're going through space, it's your center of mass that traces out a perfect parabolic curve through space. It goes up and down again. Yeah, it's only a function of the speed, the vertical component of the speed. So when you're moving along and you jump, maybe you leave the ground at a particular angle, but it's only the vertical component There's a horizontal and a vertical component of your speed, and the vertical component, this vertical component is this. Even though you're taking off this way, your vertical component is a fraction of that. And the formula actually, if I remember correctly, is, okay, you've got the time. This is your time in the air, t equals two v over g. Did I get that right? Yeah, I could get that right. Well, I could check it. So the time is in seconds, obviously, and the speed is in meters per second, and the gravitational acceleration constant is meters per second squared. That gets flipped when you bring it up. When you grind out the equation. So we have meters second, the meters and seconds cancel each other out. So yeah, that looks like it's about right. I don't study physics like I used to. Sorry, I had to look up this equation. I did know that it's only a function of your speed. It's not a function of your mass. It doesn't matter how heavy you are. Yeah, if you're heavier, then it's more difficult to get the V. It's more difficult to get the speed moving upwards if you're heavier. Well, okay, now even that, okay, like maybe you're heavier, but your heavy is muscle, more muscle than fat, more working heavy than dead weight. So then maybe you can propel yourself higher, but for the same amount of strength and action, it's more difficult to get something heavy moving, whether it be up or even around, or it's more difficult if you're heavier to slow your rotation down as well. So for figure skaters, light and slim is a type of advantage. It is an advantage, actually, because we accelerate a lot in figure skating. And when you're accelerating, this is an acceleration constant right here. When you're accelerating, that requires a force according to your mass. F equals ma, Newton's second law. Force equals your mass, your weight, times your acceleration. So if you want to accelerate and get some speed happening upwards, you go to apply some force, you got some mass, and depending on the force and the mass, you can generate upward speed that might also have some speed, that is going to also, in the case of figure skating, have some speed in this direction. And so the speed in this direction, though, has nothing to do with your air time as a projectile. But now, okay, as a human being, you can generate more vertical speed on your takeoff if you start with more horizontal speed. Yes, there is that, and that should not be neglected. That's the sort of the pole vault effect. And the pole vault effect is you redirect this speed, this kinetic energy, upward. And it's not the same mechanism as an actual pole vaulter, because a major important part of the pole vaulting action is the bending, the flex of the pole. And because when it flexes, it wants to get back to its straight shape, and it does. But in the meantime, so that's a big part of the sending you aloft. But another part of pole vaulting is you're running as fast as you can with as much kinetic energy as you can generate. You put the pole in, and it's on a kind of a very horizontal almost direction when you put it in, and then it goes vertical. So, and we can use that part of pole vaulting, because we can bend too. You put your vaulting, your tapping foot, and when we put that tapping foot in there, we can tap into the effect of going up as you keep that straight and strong. But if it bends, it's not like a pole in pole vaulting. It doesn't naturally come back to the straight shape. You got to work to do that. So a little bit different, but analogous to pole vaulting. Yeah, so if you're very slight, if you're svelte, if you're slender, you rotate. It's easier for you to rotate faster, of course. It's also easier for you to jump higher if you have, the muscles and the biomechanics, because you're lighter. And so you really don't have to jump as high if you're light, because if you're very light and you spin really fast, you don't need as much air time to get your 3 or 4, whatever it is, rotations in. I believe that the height of your jumps is important as a thing in itself. So in other words, the judges this is one of the many things that they're supposed to look for when they assess the grade of execution of your jumps, is the height. More height gets more points from the judges for a jump. So it is a thing in itself, but, you know, like, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to jump the highest you can, because jumping higher does add risk. Yes, it does add risk. An obvious way is most skaters on most jumps slip on the takeoff in some way or another. The takeoff's not efficient somehow, and they lose their balance right as they take off with all that motion and action and excitement right at the takeoff. Most skaters slip somehow and start toppling, actually, because the ice is slippery. On the takeoff, they lose their balance. We all do that, you know. And so the longer you're in the air, though, that toppling continues during that time, and so then you have more of a struggle on your landing, and you're cutting down your consistency and beauty of the jump too. So yeah, by jumping high. So and of course also in the first jump of a combination, we don't want to jump higher than necessary, because it's very important to keep your speed on the landing of that first jump, so you have enough speed to do the second jump, so you can take advantage of your speed for your second jump. So it's not like you want to jump as high as you can on every jump you do either, you know, depending on the circumstances and whatnot. Yeah, and we do use, so in order, what is the biomechanics of jumping high? Jumping high in figure skating is pushing. If we want to go upward, there has to be a force, there has to be a push. And the push happens because we're pushing the earth away from us. And yeah, we're pushing that ball away from us, and that when we accelerate upward, it generates a force because of the work that it requires to go from that bend to the straight. And so if you can generate the power in your muscles and the strength and the power to jump from a lower position, you have the potential to jump higher, because you have more contact time with the ice to exert that force. So this is not the only factor in jumping high, but it is one factor. It's kind of an undeniable fact that if you have more distance to accelerate, you can, all other things being equal, you can accelerate more. So yeah, the downsides of that is that's tiring to be down in that lower athletic power position. So maybe you're burning too much energy up down in that low position to then have the power to jump higher. So the ideal as far as getting the most height, even though and I noticed this recently when I was skating yesterday, it's so much easier to get height and consistency and build confidence if you don't bounce up and down so much going into your jumps. I was doing this on Salchows very effectively yesterday. I had the discipline to do what I believed I was trying for, and I kept that, apart from just a little bounce to help me get over the 3-turn, I basically kept the bend the same on the second side, and then just allowed that free leg action, which goes from the inside of the circle on an outside edge to the inside of the circle on an inside edge, and continues right around on a circle up into the air. And then I just, at the right time in that process, I just I'm on an angle, right? Because I'm on an edge. And I just push up. And that's for you too. That's basically how we jump. Yes, we can also go in very straight. And even some quad salchows you see, skaters go in with hardly any bend actually on the knee. And they just use the pole vaulting effect that I described earlier, which is to pull that skate out in front of you, and then you use it as to vault over. You can do it that way. Get yourself up in the air. It requires a lot of strength because that vault, that's not for free. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you're holding that edge. You got this bend, and it comes around a little bit ahead of you, so you can vault. But unless you can sustain, you got the strength and power and everything to sustain that extra force that's going to launch you into the air. Ain't gonna happen. And I should mention when you ask about jump, how high. Okay, I've described the takeoff and said a few things about rotation and jumps, but you really want to be nice to your body. And to be nice to your body is when you're contemplating how high, you also contemplate a way of coming back down to earth safely and smoothly and gracefully. And that's impact. That's a different type of strength than straightening. That's what is that? It's kind of like pushing. So you land on a very straight leg, and you try to resist. You bend, but you're trying to resist, kind of thing. And if you don't do that well, then you'll see what we see so often today, which is landings that are harsh, very misaligned, wobbly, bad positions, inconsistent, bad falls. Yeah, you can get up, suck it up, and keep going, but we're seeing quite short careers now in many of these skaters who are doing these high-powered jumps. So work not only on your technique, work on your landing position, and then make it a priority to troubleshoot your landing. After you land a jump, ask yourself, was that well aligned? Was it smooth? Was it painful? Was it, how was the landing? Become aware of your landing positions. Not only good alignment, yeah, you're gonna, and you want to land right on the outside edge, I believe. You don't want to land flat and then go out and then wobble and go outside. This is how you stop your rotation as well, is by being on a curving, leaning edge. So you can do some impact training, like going downstairs, like I've showed you, or jumping off, higher and higher, just doing some jumping actions, maybe. Get yourself warmed up slowly for this kind of action, because the action for generating rotation on a one-footed skating activity is different than what you do on the floor to generate rotation, where you have to start with some rotation. On the ice, you don't need to start with very much rotation at all. You can just start on a leaning, gliding edge and jump, and you turn automatically, and that's what you want to use to be a beautiful, efficient figure skate jumper. Yeah, I'm sure there is some aspect of this conversation that I haven't covered right now, but yeah, well, chime in on the comments if anything I said needs to be corrected, or if you want to compliment me on what a brilliant job I've done playing the role of a professor here. You don't need very you don't need any of this. You just need to know that the higher you jump, the more air time you have. Yeah. So, and actually, you know, if you're going to do these exercises off the ice, these jumping exercises, it's really helpful. I mentioned earlier that we often, on the takeoff of our jumps, we slip one way or another. We lose our balance. And here's a test you can do to see if you're good at jumping in such a way, in such a coordinated way, that you can not push yourself over in toppling in one direction or another. You can, and you can do this without your skates on, and it'll benefit your skates. It's exactly the same idea. You're going to use your ankles, your knees, and your hips to generate. And on the case of skating, you're on one foot. Okay, I'm just doing this on 2-foot for now, and you can see that I've got to bend into those 3 joints. They're all sharing the work. Now, if my action is good and my posture is good and I have good balance, then I should be landing on the same place. My feet should be coming up and down in the same place. If you do this exercise, and maybe even eventually do it changing from one foot to the other, more and more weight on one foot and the other, this is one very good way of impact training and also of jump training, because it's up and down. And this exercise is your biomechanics. Yeah, this helps you get all 3 of those joints helping out on the takeoffs and the landings, the ankles, the knees, and the hips. Okay. Yeah, so when somebody asks you or tells you to jump, you can just repeat to them the lecture that I gave you just now and say, so how high would you like me to jump? Yeah, so thank you for your participation today. Yeah, looking like a very, very nice winter day again in Tokyo. I was out running yesterday. I ran about 10 or 15 kilometers in shorts and a t-shirt. Yeah, very comfortable. Lovely place to be. Heading over to Tobu department store this morning, and planning on coming to Toronto on next Thursday, this coming Thursday. I'll be there for about 10 days or so. So, yeah, those are all the little tidbits of news. Good luck with your skating. Good luck with your jumping. Practice your stability. So, because when you get rid of wobbles, well, if you reduce wobbles, it's an unending endeavor, making yourself smoother and steadier. But if you make yourself smoother and steadier, in other words, if you work on improving your balance more and more, you improve your consistency and you reduce the chances that you'll topple or lose your balance somehow on the takeoffs of your jumps. And then you can have the confidence to soar and you can have the strength and position and grace to land. Okay. Part 2. It's not going to be very long, but yes, I did remember after I pressed the red button. Oh, yeah, there is something I should mention, because we are not like a rigid ball. So to analyze in terms of projectile is a good starting point. But as humans, I did mention that as humans we're not rigid, so we can bend in different ways. But more specifically, what we can do to increase our air time actually is we can land, so we can tuck our legs up. So if this is going to be my landing leg, I tuck it up, and thereby I increase the length of dropping time, but then I don't have as much, I I'm already landing lower, right? So then I have to have the strength or power to support that. Much easier and smoother and better if you can land on a fairly straight leg. And then, yeah, it immediately bends, but you're working to make that really nice and smooth on the landing. So yeah, you can increase your air time a little bit by landing a little bit more bent, and thereby not having quite the potential to cushion that impact. Just the final point.